Welcome to the world of wings, worms, and wonder. In this video series, we're going to be looking at art supplies, the tools that you'll use as you embark on your nature journaling journey. When you're first going into the art supply store, buying supplies can be confusing. There are so many to choose from. So in this series of videos, I'm going to go through my favorite papers, brushes, pencils, paints, and pens to help give you an idea of what's out there, what's to choose from, and my favorites and why they're my favorites, to hopefully prevent you wasting time and money on supplies that just don't perform. But of course, you know, some people may debate these. These are my choices, but I've been doing this a long time and feel pretty confident in over 3 decades of buying and using art supplies to at least give you some ideas on what's out there and help narrow your decisions. Okay, so first, art supply stores versus big chain craft stores. If you have the opportunity and option, I recommend going to a real art supply store. The people there are going to be knowledgeable. It's often artists and art school students that are working there, so they're going to have first-hand experience using the products that they sell. I also find the atmosphere to be more pleasant. It's a nicer, almost inspiring, definitely inspiring shopping experience rather than in some of those big chain craft stores. The supplies are messy or they're locked behind a glass and you can't hold them and look at them unless someone's standing there and you feel pressurized. So if you have the opportunity, go to an art supply store, or at least go to the art supply store and peruse, and then maybe you can go online and find things cheaper. But it's always nice to buy local, support local business, and cultivate a relationship with the people that work there, so it's a fun shopping experience. Now, when talking price, sure, a local shop may be more expensive than a big chain craft store, and an online discount retailer may be cheaper than both of them. But all that aside, when buying art supplies, price really does matter. If you buy a cheap brush, it's going to perform like a cheap brush. It's not going to hold its tension. It's going to leave hairs in your paintings. It's not going to be a good experience. So I recommend spending a little more on the front end, and you'll have supplies that will last you your life. I have brushes that I've taken care of that I've been using since art school, and that was 20 years ago. So if you really buy the nice things in the beginning, you will save yourself a lot of headaches and money in the long run. Okay, now that you know where you're going to shop and that you're going to get some high quality materials, in today's video we're going to be talking about paper first. Paper is going to be, you know, what helps you create something that is tangible, that has your art on it. And there's a lot of choices out there. So we're going to look at a few choices, starting with notebooks, spiral bound sketchbooks. So this is one. This is a small size pocket nature journal. This is one I've been working with and I really like. The brand is Nature Sketch. And this is 140-pound paper. Now, what does that mean? Papers and sketchbooks and notebooks, they come in pounds or weights. So that's talking how stiff is your page going to be. And the pound of paper is really good depending on what medium you're using. If you're just using pencil, you can use a lighter weight paper than you would if you're using paint or water with paint, because or even marker for bleeding through, because the paper needs to be a little more substantial and be able to take that color. So this is a 140-pound weight sketchbook, and I do watercolor and pen in this sketchbook, and I could do pencil or whatever else I wanted to. But this is a great weight. I don't have to put anything in between the pages. They do, you see, buckle a little bit, but that's just kind of to be expected. You can always iron the page or place a heavy book on top if you want your book to be totally flat, but I don't really worry about that so much. So it's really nice to have a pocket sketch journal. This one's 5x7. They come bigger, they come smaller, that you can take out in the field with you. Now this is a nature journal. This is a regular sketchbook. This is about a 75-pound weight paper, but I've decorated the cover. But you can find spiral bound sketchbooks by the dozens. I do use paint in this one. So for example, on this page where I combined pen and paint, I used a piece of cardboard, and this is kind of like a poster board with a shiny side that I slide in behind to repel any water from leaking into the page behind. So you can see this is a thin paper. If I would use like Sharpie or something, it would probably bleed through to the back. So I don't usually use that with this kind of paper. But this is a larger size sketchbook, great for taking notes, making larger drawings. Nice to have on hand to just keep your options open. And then this is kind of fun, choosing a sketchbook that has dark paper in it. Not good for paint, or not good for watercolor. You could use acrylic paint. This is a craft paper and it's thick. So I don't have to worry about anything bleeding through, but like I said, a light wash is not really going to show up so well on this paper, and you won't get your whites unless you go back in with colored pencil or acrylic paint. Also with water, this has a very rough, almost, it's craft paper, cardboardy surface that has a lot of sort of almost fuzzy texture, and that will not be great with water. So that will kind of peel up. So I do not use water in this sketchbook, but it's fun to have to experiment with colored pencils if you want to play around on a different color background. So moving on from spiral bound books, which usually come in weights, 65 pound is a sketch weight. There's a drawing weight, which will be anywhere 75, 100 pounds, to a more substantial weight like this nature sketch, which can take paint, that would be 140 pounds. Okay, now we're going to get a little heavier, talking about watercolor pads. There's a few kinds. I like the watercolor block, and what that means is that it has the binding, like the glue you would peel off, on more than just the top side. It holds the paper in place. This particular block has the adhesive on the top and the bottom, and this is a 140 pound watercolor paper, which is a nice weight. Paper can come in increments, but 300 pound paper would be like very thick, stiff paper. And for what I do, I don't really need that, but if you wanted to do a really large watercolor painting, thick paper might be better, so it wouldn't warp as much. But the binding also on the edges is nice if you want to take the watercolor block out into the field. You don't have to tape your paper down. It's not going to warp so much. So this is one variety, bound on the top and the bottom. And this brand is Arches. This is my favorite brand of watercolor block because it's bound on all sides. Oh, there's a loose piece. And you can see it's bound in black. I've torn some of these out, but it's bound in black, and I don't know, I just think it looks nice around the edges, and your paper will really stay put because it's bound on all edges. So you may have noticed, if you can see, this is also 140 pound. That's kind of my go-to average paper weight. It says cold pressed. You'll notice that they'll say on watercolor blocks, watercolor pads, hot press or cold press. And a lot of papers will say this as well. What does that mean? That means whether it has a rough textured surface or a very smooth textured surface. In watercolor paper, I prefer a cold press. I like the texture of the paper. But in Bristol Board, which I use for my illustrations in my book, I choose a hot press. And that is this is a new pad, a very slick, smooth surface that when I scan the images, I'm not going to see any of that texture in the scan. So it'll give a nice, clean image. So if you wanted to do some drawings or paintings that you would scan in and maybe you could make cards out of, like gift cards or something, a hot press may be a better choice. You would have less work to do in Photoshop cleaning it up. And this is a 100-pound hot press Bristol board, which is different than watercolor paper. It's like a heavyweight kind of card stock. Really great for drawing, really great for pen work. When you're using watercolor, you would have to do small, like light water. You know, you can do washes and you can do watercolor paintings on it for sure, but you have to be careful with how much water you're using. You can't, like on a 140-pound cold press watercolor paper, you could take a big fat wet brush and do a big wet on wet wash, which we'll talk about in future videos if you're not sure what that means. But on Bristol board, you have to be a little more conscious of the amount of water you're using. So thinking about now what to do with these pages. It's fun, I think, to, you know, sometimes it's nice to use the paper just straight, to use the block on its own, but I often like to take some pages out and make my own booklet. This is a little journal that I took by using paper from my Arches pad and just folding it in half and doing a simple stitch binding on the back, just for fun. And you can take it on a trip with you. It's very easy, very lightweight. It's great for making a travel journal. Like I was in Texas, so I did some sketches which I haven't painted in yet. So these are really fun. You can take it out with you. That's an old one. But that's one fun way to make your own journal. And simple stitch journal, you can Google that on the internet. I learned how to do this from Kyla Givehand on her website. If you Google Kyla Givehand simple stitch journal, you can find that video. This is another little watercolor book I made, but I have not used yet, out of, again, Arches paper, because I just love the way it leaves that black edge, just a little something extra. And this is called a perfect binding, where it's a glue binding, but a very simple little nature sketch, or any sketch, watercolor paper book, journal, sketchbook, whatever you want to call it, nature journal, that you can use however you like. And you can use stiffer paper. If I were to use a 300-pound paper in this book, it would work because of this binding method. But I wouldn't want to use a 300-pound watercolor paper in this book because it would kind of make the pages hard to turn because they would be so thick and stiff. So, okay, that's a lot of information. Let's recap. You may want to get a spiral-bound nature journal. If you want to use paint, 140-pound paper or more. Anything less than 100 pounds is really just for sketching. Then you might want to get some watercolor paper in a block or pad form. Go a little heavier weight, 140-pound or more, considering what you want to do with it. And cold press is a nice texture. Maybe if you feel like it, invest in a cold press and a hot press and see which one you like best. For me, I like cold press for my kind of more artistic pieces, and then a hot press for pieces that I'm going to scan. You may want to try Bristol Board, especially if you really enjoy doing pen work. That is really nice, clean, smooth surface for pen work. And then maybe where are they? Here they are. Try making your own journal, travel journal or a specific topic, maybe one of these for just vegetables. This is great for really quick on the go. And then you should have yourself covered with paper, you know. Having a sketchbook that's just for sketching or ideas, having a small nature journal to put in your field bag, having a larger nature journal that you use at home, loose paper for when inspiration strikes, and you should be really set. Okay. That's paper. Tune in to the next video and keep connecting to nature with creativity. See you soon. Bye.
Your words are growing.